You're not the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. The truth is actually more interesting, more exciting, or more concerning depending on the company that you keep. Today I want to talk about why you should forget networking and start taking a closer look at your social circle and how you might be underestimating it. And I'm going to be sharing 5 tips for having a look at your social circle and the influence that it might be able to have on your life. So grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. I've spent over a decade in marketing, and I was even the president of my MBA alumni network at the university that I went to here in Australia. I've heard the word networking more than it should ever be used. And I personally feel like when we are talking about business or marketing or personal branding, that there is a disproportionate focus on making contacts and networking as opposed to actually having a closer look at the social circles that you are already a part of. Because it is likely that your social circles have a greater impact, value, or influence on your success or failure than you might currently be giving it credit for. So let's dive into my first tip. Tip number 1 is that you are who you spend your time with. In The Compound Effect, Darren Hardy highlights some really interesting research in social psychology that came out of Harvard. And it said that the people that you habitually associate with determine 95% of your success or failure. So this can be a really exciting prospect if you keep a circle of friends who are going to contribute to your success or help you move towards that direction. And obviously, if you don't have a circle like that, it is likely going to have an effect in the opposite direction. Tip number 2 is that you aren't the average of the 5 people that you spend your most time with. This became a really popular saying in the motivational world, but it's actually a little bit deceiving because it doesn't go quite far enough. I came across some really interesting research in the book High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard, and in it he talks about this idea of social clustering. This idea of social clustering is that your behaviors, your attitudes, even your health outcomes form in social clusters. People around you can actually affect your sleep, your diet, and your spending habits. This dynamic is called social contagion, and it can have really great upsides if you keep company that is really having a positive influence on your life. But it can also have its downsides. Things like smoking, obesity, depression, loneliness, drug use, divorce, they can form in social clusters. There was some really interesting research that explained this idea of social contagion even further. And it was said to be one of the largest and longest studies in the health industry. It found that if your friend is obese, you are 45% more likely to gain weight in the next 2 to 4 years. But it actually went even further than that as well. It showed that if your friend's friend is obese, you are 20% more likely to gain weight. And it also went one step further than that and said that if your friend of a friend's friend is also obese, then you are 10% more likely to gain weight. So this research really demonstrates the idea of not just your network or your social circle, but the social circles that you're actually surrounded by as well, and the influence that they are having on you potentially too. It's like the saying goes, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Tip number 3 is making friends. In business, we tend to overestimate the importance of creating contacts and creating your network and expanding your network. And we tend to underestimate the importance of making friends. I absolutely love how Eric Barker calls this out in his book, Barking Up the Wrong Tree, where he describes networking for what it is: icky. He says that we should instead shift our mindset to being more about making friends, much like we did when we were children. Because if we adopt this childlike mindset around making friends, then the problems associated with networking can go away. And when you focus on friends, you're not just focusing on relationships that are going to benefit you professionally. You are focusing on relationships that are likely going to benefit you personally and physically as well. There has been research that has shown that having just a few friends can have a more significant impact on your health than obesity, because loneliness can take the toll on your body as the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But by having friends, you eliminate some of that problem. You are helping yourself personally and physically. So instead of focusing on creating networks, focus on having genuine relationships, and relationships that are outside of just the online world as well. I absolutely love this quote from Eric Barker in Barking Up the Wrong Tree, where he says, having friends stacked like books in a digital library on a network is not the same as actually talking to people and spending time with them. That's not a relationship, that's virtual stamp collecting. So instead of networking, focus on how you can build your relationships around friendships. For example, you might have a group that meets regularly for lunch, a group that is dedicated to a particular interest around a club perhaps, or maybe a group that is interested in a particular form of exercise or sport. If you want more ideas on how you can create a community around your hobby, then check out my last video on how your hobbies can actually work for you. Tip number 4 is that new friends aren't necessarily always better. As I've shared on this channel before, growing up, I absolutely loved the Sunscreen song by Baz Luhrmann. It is a litany of amazing life advice. But my best friend and I used to particularly love One Little Pearl of Wisdom, and that was about friends. It said, understand that friends come and go, but for the precious few, you should hold on. Work hard to bridge the gaps in geography and lifestyle, because the older you get, the more you need the people you knew when you were young. I have personally read hundreds of business books, and there was only one business book called Choose Possibility by Sukhinder Singh Cassidy that talked about this idea of relationships in what I think is the most refreshing way. And it highlighted a quote by a professor called David Burkus, who said that your old friends are better than your new friends. And why they highlight this is that your old friends are naturally, hopefully, going to be more invested in you as a person and in seeing you succeed, in supporting you, because they have had a longer relationship with you, as opposed to the people that you might just meet at networking events or rarely see. And the book highlights this beautifully when it says, for all the pressure we put on ourselves to make cocktail connections, our greatest chance of finding an exciting new career opportunity comes from our deepest professional connections. So even in your career, think about the people that you have known for the longest amount of time. They're more likely to have become friends along the journey in your career. They're more likely going to be more invested in seeing you do well. Tip number 5 is to remember the science of socializing. Simon Sinek talks about this really nicely in his book, Leaders Eat Last. He talks about serotonin and oxytocin as being key chemicals in socializing. They're socializing chemicals because they help to create a sense of belonging and fulfillment and security. They create a circle of safety. Then you have dopamine, and dopamine is all about instant gratifications, and it calls it the selfish chemical. Oxytocin, on the other hand, is long lasting, and it's more likely going to occur the longer amount of time that you spend with someone. And it's promoted during acts of service or physical contact or generosity. And these are things that are more likely going to occur among friends than just among contacts that you meet professionally. So, the next time that you are looking to fill your calendar with networking events or meetings, take the time to reassess and ask yourself if you are choosing your friends wisely. Thanks so much. Subscribe for more like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.